Hi, and welcome to the latest edition of The Exchange, brought to you by the NYSE. I'm Douglas Jonas, your host. I'm joined today by Jody Meraz. Jody is the head of research with Kayne Anderson. And as a reminder, today's interview is for informational purposes only. The NYSE does not recommend investments or investment strategies. Jody, Kayne Anderson, you run two closed-end funds here with us at the New York Stock Exchange, both KYN and KMF. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about those funds.
Sure. And first, thank you, Doug, for having us on. KYN was our first closed-end fund. Its IPO on the New York Stock Exchange was 2004, and KMF launched in 2010. The thesis that we had is very simple: offer investors the ability to buy a group of energy infrastructure companies in a single fund, and importantly, do it in a way that's actively managed. We don't follow an index. We have always been focused on energy infrastructure, always been focused on hard assets. And last year, we actually broadened the mandate of both funds to capitalize on what we see as an energy transition megatrend. So if you look today, KYN is North America focused energy infrastructure companies, and a majority of that is invested in midstream energy infrastructure. KMF is the more diversified of the two. It's a broader mix of energy infrastructure companies, and it focuses on what we call next gen energy and infrastructure. So it has heavier investment in renewables companies and utilities that are participating in the energy transition.
Now, Jody, I know you've actually joined us on webinars. For those that might have missed Jody's webinar, go to homeofetfs.com. You'll be able to see it there. In that webinar, Jody, you talk a lot about your excitement around energy infrastructure and energy transition. You used both those phrases again here. Could you explain a little bit what it means when you say those terms?
Sure. When we talk about the energy transition, we're referring to a term that we and others use to describe energy industry transitioning toward a cleaner mix of lower carbon and renewable energy sources. Importantly, Doug, that's not renewables alone. Fossil fuels and natural gas, as a good example, will continue to see growing demand for a very long time. And we see two main things that are happening in the energy transition. Total energy usage is growing, and importantly, electricity usage is growing. And most of that is fueled by renewable energy and growth in natural gas. Second is the focus that we have on greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of this growth in natural gas infrastructure and renewables infrastructure is coming at the expense of coal, which is a big needle mover on emissions. So you've seen a lot of this in the news, whether it's government policies or companies that are looking for cleaner energy. As the world is striving to do that, we really like the growth aspect of companies that focus on natural gas infrastructure and renewables infrastructure, the hard assets in the industry. It's nice too that the companies that are doing this have what we believe are good ESG and sustainability attributes. So those are some of the things that we're looking for at the closed-end funds.
Yeah, and you know, you make an important point about closed-end funds. Tell us why closed-end funds in particular are so efficient in this space.
Sure. We first and foremost think the closed-end funds are an efficient way to get yield in a portfolio, and doing it while investing in companies that have hard assets and what we think are dependable cash flows. So from a yield perspective, KYN today has a yield of just over 7.5%. At KMF, that yield is just over 5%. And we think it's an efficient way to get exposure as well to active management through a single stock trade. So we have a team of people who wake up every day thinking about energy infrastructure, and investors are gaining access to Kayne Anderson's expertise and opinions. We see a number of opportunities to invest in stocks that traded very poorly during COVID, in fact, traded poorly before COVID. And while that was painful to watch, we see good value in companies that have strong cash flows and assets that are critical to the economy. Also on the efficiency side, we think the closed-end funds are an efficient way to get access to the energy transition. So we think we're unique because of our focus on infrastructure and including fossil fuels in that. On the renewable side, we don't focus on clean tech or manufacturing companies. We've been buying renewables infrastructure since 2013. So feel like it's an efficient way to get the knowledge and history that we have in the space. And the last thing, Doug, on efficiency is you can buy all of this for less than net asset value. So closed-end fund stock prices typically trade at a discount to the net asset value. Our funds are no different. So far this year, KYN has traded at a 13% or so discount to net asset value. KMF has been closer to 20% trading discount to net asset value. Those discounts have been stubbornly large, especially during COVID. But as it relates to efficiency, a new investor can pay less than the underlying value of the portfolios.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic. Now, Jody, I know you have a very large and interesting event coming up next week. Could you share a little bit about what's happening?
Sure, definitely. That's right. We have a virtual investor day coming up where we'll talk about both closed-end funds, KYN and KMF, and we'll give a market update on the sectors in which we invest and importantly lay out what we think is an attractive value proposition right now, an attractive way to get exposure to the energy transition. We'll also talk about ESG and how we incorporate it into the funds, and we'll answer some questions that are those that we frequently receive from investors.
Now, Jody, I know you discuss the portfolios, and Kayne Anderson, you produce a lot of research for a lot of different investors. Is there a archetype or, like who should listen in? Is it a certain type of investor?
Sure. Nicely, Doug. This is the first of its kind for us. So we're trying to take an approach that would be beneficial to a wide variety of investors, whether it's current investors, advisors, or even analysts in the energy sector. So we're trying to make it useful for people who own the stock today, and also those who are interested in all these dynamics happening in the energy industry and energy transition. For those who have owned our funds for a while, COVID was an incredibly tough year, but we do see some green shoots emerging in the economy as we recover from COVID, and we're starting to see it at the funds too. So we're excited to tell that story.
And of course, really important, how does somebody go about registering? Where do they go to find out more information?
Viewers can visit our website at kaynefunds.com, and we will have there a link to the event.
That's a wrap on the latest edition of The Exchange, brought to you by the NYSE. Jody, thank you very much for joining us for what is always a lively and educational event. Learn more about Kayne Anderson and other interesting closed-end funds at our website, homeofetfs.com.